Bright lights hammered down on Maya's face as Ethan's cold voice cracked through the crowd, slicing her open in front of everyone. Her hands shook so hard she felt her nails dig into her palms, but she couldn't unclench. Laughter echoed behind Clara's smug smile as Ethan stepped back like she was something dirty he needed to shake off. Maya tried to breathe, but her chest tightened, heat rising into her ears as whispers stabbed at her from all sides. Her voice broke when she tried to defend herself, turning her shame into something louder than any insult. Ethan didn't even look sorry. He looked annoyed, like she'd embarrassed him. For a moment, Maya wondered if this was the moment she finally shattered. But then, she saw a shadow near the back of the room, someone important watching her fall apart. Why now? Why did they turn on her here? And why did that man in the suit stare at her like she mattered? Maya walked down the hallway with her chest tight, feeling the sting of every whisper following her like a cold wind. She kept her eyes low, gripping her books as if they were the last pieces, holding her together. Each step felt heavier, like the floor wanted to swallow her before the shame could. Her breaths came short and uneven, memories replaying Ethan's dismissive voice over and over. She wanted to disappear, fade into the walls, into the shadows, into anything that wasn't this moment. But then she noticed a man standing near the exit, watching her with a calm, unreadable expression. His presence stopped her, not out of fear, but something strange, something like fate twisting open a door she didn't know existed. Maya tried to slip past the two men without drawing attention, but her steps slowed when President Ward's voice gently called her name. She turned, heart racing, wondering why someone so important would bother with someone like her. His expression wasn't pity, something far worse. It was recognition, as if he saw something inside her she didn't believe existed anymore. General Pierce watched silently, arms crossed, studying her like he was measuring her strength. Maya's breath shook as she answered, her voice barely steady. She thought she had already lost everything today, but now she sensed something shifting beneath her feet, something she wasn't ready for, something terrifying and strangely hopeful. President Ward asked her a simple question, one that cut through her panic. "Do you always let people speak to you like that?" Maya's breath faltered, shame twisting in her stomach. She wanted to hide, to escape the memory of Ethan's rejection, but the president's eyes were steady, almost inviting her to stand taller. General Pierce's gaze sharpened, waiting for her answer like it mattered more than she realized. Maya swallowed hard, feeling the truth rise in her throat. No one had ever asked her something like that, not with sincerity. And for the first time, she wondered if today's humiliation wasn't the end of her story, but the violent beginning of something unexpected. The president's tone softened as he told her that pain like hers could shape extraordinary strength if she chose not to bury it. Maya blinked, unsure whether to believe him, unsure why someone so powerful cared enough to stop for her. General Pierce finally stepped forward, his voice deep and grounded, telling her that moments like this either break a person or forge them. Maya felt something stir in her chest, a tiny flame fighting through the ashes of her humiliation. Maybe she wasn't meant to walk away defeated. Maybe, without knowing it, today was the day her entire life shifted direction. Maya sat alone in the quiet corner of the library, the echoes of yesterday's humiliation still crawling beneath her skin. But instead of hiding, she found herself replaying the president's words again and again. They felt like a doorway she wasn't sure she had the right to open. She stared at her worn notebooks, pages filled with ideas she never showed anyone, thoughts she never believed mattered. For the first time, she wondered if her mind, not her status, was what someone had finally noticed. The fear didn't vanish, but it loosened enough for her to breathe. When she began writing again, her hand shook from something new. Not shame, not rejection, but a trembling spark of belonging she didn't understand yet. She didn't know that someone was already watching her progress from afar, waiting to see if she would rise. Days passed, and Maya found herself summoned to a small government office she had never seen before. She expected to be scolded, dismissed, or told the meeting was some mistake. Instead, she was met by a warm interviewer who seemed more fascinated by her ideas than her past. Maya spoke softly at first, her voice shaky, but as she explained her theories, patterns she noticed, problems she solved in her mind without effort, something inside her began to unfold. Their questions weren't traps, they were invitations. For once, she wasn't being judged for what she lacked, but valued for what she carried within. When she walked out of the room, her heart raced with a mix of disbelief and a quiet, fragile pride. Maya was shocked when they called her back the next day. Instead of a simple thank you, they handed her documents, access badges, project outlines, and roles she wasn't sure she deserved. She stared at them, wondering if they had confused her with someone else. But every small detail had her name printed clearly. The realization crawled over her like a slow, warm tide. They wanted her. They believed in her. And maybe, just maybe, she could believe in herself too. As she walked through the bright corridors with her new badge in hand, the weight of the world she lived in began to shift. The same girl who once shook under cruel laughter was now stepping into a future she never imagined worth dreaming about. Training began immediately, and Maya threw herself into every lesson like she was trying to outrun her past. Some nights she stayed until the halls were silent, practicing, reading, solving problems long after others went home. Her fears never fully disappeared. They clung to her, whispering that she didn't belong. But something stronger started to grow over them, determination. Every time she felt herself slipping, she remembered that moment on the stage. The moment she swore she would never feel that powerless again. And slowly, she felt her steps shift from hesitant to steady, from steady to strong. She didn't know that both the president and the general reviewed her progress daily, watching her quietly rise. Weeks later, Maya was invited to present a full analysis to senior officials. Her hands trembled as she set her notes down, but she steadied herself with a deep breath. When she began speaking, her voice cracked at first, but as the room grew quiet and every eye focused on her, a strange calm rose inside. She explained patterns no one else had noticed, solutions others had missed, and strategies that left the officials exchanging impressed glances. For the first time in her life, she stood in a room where her mind, not her background, spoke the loudest. As she finished, her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. But then she saw the president nod at her with genuine respect. And in that moment, Maya realized she wasn't the girl from the stage anymore. Ethan's world began to crack long before he realized it. At first it was small. Missed calls from investors, emails filled with excuses, Clara brushing off his worries with cold impatience. But one morning, the storm hit all at once. Messages poured in like a flood, each one a warning, each one another piece of his life slipping away. His company was failing. Deals he bragged about were collapsing, and Clara, instead of standing beside him, paced the living room with a look that made his stomach twist. She didn't ask if he was okay. She didn't even touch him. She just asked how much money he had left. When he admitted the truth, that things were worse than he'd said, her expression didn't soften. It hardened, like he'd become useless to her in a single moment. Ethan tried to salvage the situation, calling every contact he once bragged about. But now their voices were colder, shorter, filled with excuses. Some didn't answer at all. The silence felt worse than the rejection. Clara watched him struggle, her eyes narrowing with each failed attempt. When he finally hung up the last call, she didn't comfort him. She laughed, a short, sharp sound that hit him harder than any insult. She accused him of hiding the truth, of ruining her life by dragging her into a sinking ship. Ethan felt something inside him tear. He wanted to fight back, to remind her of everything he'd done for her, but the words fell flat. Clara wasn't listening. She was already planning her escape. The breaking point came late at night. Ethan walked into the living room to find Clara packing her designer bags, each motion sharp and unapologetic. She didn't bother hiding it. She was leaving. When he asked why, she told him with icy calm that she didn't plan to suffer through a poor man's downfall. Her words sliced him open, echoing the cruelty he once threw at Maya without hesitation. Now he felt the sting of it. Deep. Humiliating. Unforgettable. Clara walked past him without guilt, without a second glance, leaving him alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too large, too empty, too cold. As the door clicked shut behind her, Ethan realized he was standing in the ruins of his own choices. Ethan spent days drowning in silence, the kind that makes every clock tick sound like an accusation. He hadn't eaten much. He barely slept. Every thought dragged him back to the moment Clara walked out, and the memories of how he once walked away from Maya burned him deeper now. When the final notice arrived, a government rejection of his company's desperate request for funding, Ethan felt the last piece of stability disappear, but the letter mentioned one detail that made him freeze. The proposal would be reviewed in a meeting led by someone working directly with the president. Someone whose name he didn't recognize. Yet something about it felt strange, familiar even. The world was pulling him toward a confrontation he didn't see coming. With nothing left to lose, Ethan forced himself to prepare for the upcoming review. His hands shook as he organized his papers, every detail reminding him how far he had fallen. But beneath the panic was something he hadn't felt in years. Fear of facing the past. He kept glancing at the name he didn't recognize on the meeting list. A name attached to someone working directly with the president. Something about it gnawed at him, a faint echo he couldn't grasp. As he stepped into the cold night air, heading toward the most important meeting of his broken life, he had no idea that the girl he once rejected, heartlessly, publicly, cruelly, was the same woman waiting in that room, and nothing could prepare him for what he was about to see. What he was about to see. Ethan walked into the government boardroom with his stomach twisted so tight it felt like a knot he couldn't unravel. His steps were slow, almost hesitant, as if the air itself was warning him to turn around. The room was colder than he expected. Silent except for the faint hum of overhead lights. He set his briefcase down, trying to steady his breath. Then he looked up and froze. At the far end of the long table sat a woman he almost didn't recognize. Her posture was calm, her expression unreadable, her presence stronger than anyone else in the room. But her eyes, those eyes, hit him like a punch to the chest. The world around him fell away as the truth clawed its way into his mind. Maya, the girl he rejected. The girl he broke. The girl he left behind. And now she was seated beside the president. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice barely scraped out of his throat. He expected anger in Maya's eyes, maybe bitterness or something sharp enough to reflect the past. But what he saw was worse. Indifference. She looked at him as if he were a stranger, someone irrelevant to her world. That calmness cut deeper than any rage could have. President Ward began the meeting without hesitation, treating Maya not as an assistant but as an equal. Ethan sat down slowly, feeling small in a room where she now stood taller than he ever imagined. Every word she spoke was clear, sharp, confident, and each one reminded him of the girl he pushed aside. The girl he never truly saw. Now she was someone important, someone powerful, someone beyond his reach. The deeper the meeting went, the harder it became for Ethan to breathe. Maya spoke with a precision he had never heard from her before. Strong, sharp, calm. She wasn't timid. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't the girl he remembered standing under stage lights with shaking hands. She was someone elevated, someone rebuilt from the pieces he once shattered. Every time she glanced at the data, She made connections no one else noticed. People leaned in when she spoke. Even the president paused to let her lead. Ethan felt something he never expected. Regret so heavy it pressed into his bones. He realized how blind he had been, how cruel, how stupid. And yet, Maya never once looked at him with recognition. She treated him like he didn't matter, and maybe now, he truly didn't. As the meeting neared its end, Maya finally acknowledged Ethan. Not with kindness, not with anger, but with a steady professional tone that made him feel like he had disappeared from her memory. She asked a single question about his proposal, her voice smooth and controlled. Ethan stumbled over his answer, his confidence cracking under the weight of her calm. The room noticed, and he felt sweat gather on his palms. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She wasn't trying to embarrass him. She simply didn't care. That cold detachment was a punishment he never expected, one he couldn't escape. For the first time, he wondered if he deserved every piece of this suffocating discomfort. When the meeting finally ended, Ethan lingered behind, hoping, praying, for a moment alone with her. He didn't know what he would say, only that he needed to. Maya collected her files calmly, her attention fully on her work. As she rose from her seat, the general stepped closer, clearly protective of her space. President Ward offered her a quiet comment that made her smile. Something small, warm, real. Ethan felt his chest tighten. That tiny smile showed him more truth than any speech could. Maya had built a life where he no longer existed, and as she walked past him without pausing, without even a flicker of recognition beyond courtesy, Ethan realized he had lost something far more valuable than wealth. Ethan found Maya in the corridor 2 days later, just outside another strategy session. He didn't plan what to say. He simply acted on panic, desperation, and a gnawing guilt he could no longer carry. When he called her name, she paused, but only for a split second. Her eyes met his, calm and unreadable, and for a moment he felt like he was staring at a stranger wearing the face of someone he once knew. He tried to apologize, the words spilling awkwardly, but she didn't flinch. She listened without emotion, without reaction, as if his years of cruelty were nothing more than dust on her shoes. And that hurt more than he expected. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "This isn't about the past. It's about the work." Then she walked away, leaving him standing there, holding an apology that felt far too small for the damage he had done. Clara returned like a storm, loud, furious, dripping venom. She barged into the building after learning Ethan had approached the president's team, claiming he was stealing her ideas and using her name to regain power. The guards barely managed to calm her before she caused a scene. Maya heard the commotion from inside the briefing room but stayed focused, though her pulse quickened. Clara's anger wasn't directed at Ethan alone. It spilled toward Maya too, the same old jealousy resurfacing like poison. Maya kept her expression steady, even when Clara's sharp voice echoed down the hall. This time, Maya wasn't the helpless girl Clara mocked. She stood taller, stronger, backed by people who respected her. Even so, the past tugged at her chest, memories she thought she had buried. Clara pushed past the guards and confronted Maya directly, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. She accused her of manipulating Ethan, of stealing opportunities, of pretending to be something she wasn't. But Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. She simply let Clara's words fall empty between them. The years had changed Maya. They had not changed Clara. When Clara tried to insult her again, Rowan stepped forward with a warning tone that silenced the hallway. Even President Ward approached, his presence enough to make Clara's confidence falter. Maya stayed quiet, not because she was afraid, but because Clara's anger no longer had the power to shake her. That realization alone was a small victory. The national crisis erupted that same afternoon. Data breaches, sudden intelligence gaps, threats emerging faster than the team could respond. Chaos filled the command center as officials scrambled to understand what was happening. Maya pushed aside the personal drama and focused entirely on the work. She moved through reports and surveillance feeds with calm precision, connecting dots that no one else saw. While others panicked, she found patterns hidden beneath the noise. Her voice steadied the room as she explained what needed to be done, step by step. Even the president looked relieved as he leaned toward her, listening closely. For the first time, Maya wasn't simply part of the team. She was leading it. When the crisis finally eased, relief washed through the room, but it was Maya who stood at the center of it all, steady and unwavering. The president approached her, thanking her directly, his voice warm with admiration. Everyone around them understood the truth. She had saved them from disaster. Ethan watched from the sidelines, his chest heavy with regret. Clara looked at Maya with disbelief, as if she were seeing a version of her she never thought possible. But the moment that struck Ethan deepest came when Maya glanced in his direction. Not with anger, not with longing, but with simple acknowledgement. It told him everything. She didn't need him. She didn't even think about him. She had become more than he ever believed she could be. After the crisis died down, Ethan couldn't ignore the truth pressing on his chest. He needed answers, needed to understand who Maya had become and how she had risen so far beyond the girl he remembered. Hearing bits of her journey from scattered staff, he realized the weight she had carried alone. Every late-night study session, every struggle, every moment she had buried her hurt, he had played a part in pushing her toward it. The guilt settled so heavily on him that he almost couldn't breathe. When he approached her office, he hesitated outside the door, terrified of facing the person he had underestimated. Maya didn't look surprised when he entered. She simply waited, instead of speaking first, giving him the space he needed to finally confront the past he spent years pretending didn't matter. Ethan's voice shook as he spoke, admitting he hadn't understood her back then, that he was selfish and blind. He confessed how much it hurt now to see the pain he had caused, and how deeply he regretted ever choosing someone like Clara over someone like her. Maya listened in silence, her expression calm but distant. She wasn't waiting for revenge, and she didn't seem hungry for apologies. Instead, she looked at him like a lesson she had already learned. When she finally spoke, her words were simple. "You didn't break me, you only showed me who I needed to become." The truth wasn't meant to wound him, only to close a door that had remained open too long. Ethan felt something inside him collapse, the last fragile piece of denial shattering. Later that evening, Ethan wandered through the quiet lobby, overwhelmed by everything he had heard. But then he overheard two staff members discussing Maya, how she had worked 2 jobs while studying, how she never let exhaustion stop her, how she kept pushing long after others would have given up. They described the heartbreak she endured, the humiliation, the loneliness, the way she rebuilt herself without asking anyone for help. Ethan felt each detail like a blow. He had never known any of it, never cared enough to look, never imagined she had carried so much. For the first time, he understood just how deeply he had failed her. Not because she had needed saving, but because she deserved far better than the cruelty he had given. Ethan confronted Clara the next day, desperate for closure. She met him with the same icy arrogance she always carried, mocking him for chasing Maya, accusing him of being weak. But Ethan no longer shrank beneath her words. He finally saw through the glittering mask he once admired. He realized Clara had never truly loved him, only the lifestyle he provided. When he told her he regretted choosing her over Maya, Clara exploded, spewing hateful comments about Maya's past poverty and appearance. Her rage only revealed her emptiness. Ethan walked away mid-sentence, finally breaking free from a version of himself he no longer wanted to be. Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the city when Ethan approached again, this time quieter, humbler, and stripped of every excuse he once hid behind. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't beg for another chance. He simply thanked her for standing strong for surviving what he had thrown at her, for becoming someone powerful despite the pain he caused. Maya listened with a soft breath, the wind carrying strands of her hair across her face. She told him she didn't hate him. She didn't remember him as a monster, just a part of her journey she had outgrown. Her voice wasn't bitter, it was peaceful. And that peace broke Ethan more than any anger could have. It was the moment he finally realized he no longer mattered in the story of her life. The days after their final conversation felt strangely quiet for Maya. Not empty, just calm, like the air after a storm has passed. She no longer felt the old weight that used to follow her, the one built from rejection and doubt. As she walked through the halls of the government building, staff greeted her with genuine respect, not pity. Every step reminded her of the distance she had traveled from the girl Ethan once dismissed. When she entered the strategy room, she found the president waiting with a warm smile and a stack of new responsibilities tailored just for her. She realized then that life had finally shifted into a space where she belonged, not because she fought for approval, but because she earned her place through strength she forged herself. And for the first time in a long while, she felt whole. Ethan returned one last time, not to change her mind, not to ask for anything, but to offer a real, honest apology, without expecting forgiveness. He found Maya reviewing documents in a quiet conference room. She looked up with calm recognition. Not warmth, but not coldness either. He told her he had begun rebuilding his life from the ground up, this time without shortcuts or lies. Maya nodded softly, wishing him well, and for the first time Ethan saw something he had never noticed before. Her peace. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't indifference. It was strength. The kind born from surviving everything meant to break her. When he left, he didn't look back, and Maya didn't chase the memory of what they once were. That chapter had closed. News of Maya's brilliance spread quickly through the administration. She was soon invited into high-level meetings that once felt far beyond her reach. Each task she took on, she executed with quiet precision, earning trust from leaders who had served for decades. Maya found comfort in the work, in the purpose it gave her, and in the sense that she finally understood her own worth. She no longer carried the old insecurity that used to haunt her. Instead, she carried strength built from pain and healing. And while Ethan was rebuilding his life elsewhere, Maya was building something entirely different, something that didn't depend on anyone's approval, not even her own need to prove herself. She was finally moving forward with a clear heart. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Maya found herself walking the quiet hallway alone. She paused near a window overlooking the city lights, remembering the girl she once was, the one who stood trembling on a stage while the world laughed. She no longer felt pain from that memory. Instead, she felt gratitude. Without that moment, she might never have discovered the fire inside her. She might never have met the people who recognized her strength before she recognized it herself. She touched the glass lightly, watching the blurred glow of the skyline. Her past no longer held power over her. It was simply a place she had walked through on her way to becoming someone she could finally be proud of. The next morning, President Ward held a press briefing to introduce new members of his inner advisory circle. When he called Maya's name, she stepped forward into the bright lights with calm confidence. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured, and officials straightened in respect. Maya didn't shake or hide. She stood tall, owning every part of the moment. As her name echoed through the room, she felt the quiet satisfaction of becoming someone she once only dreamed of being. Ethan, watching from afar on a small screen in a modest apartment, felt pride mixed with bittersweet ache. But Maya didn't know, and didn't need to. Her story had never been about revenge. It was about rising, and she had risen higher than anyone ever expected, including herself.